Originals. Découvrez en avant-première nos interviews sur les séries qui font l'actu.
Dans cet épisode d'Originals, on est avec Stephen Dunn, le créateur de la version 2022 de Queer as Folk, qui sera disponible à partir du 31 juillet sur Starzplay. So hi, Stephen.
Hey, how are you?
So how did you know that enough time has passed and it was all right now to make a reboot of Queer as Folk?
Queer as Folk meant so much to me growing up. It was my first exposure to a queer community. It was my sexual awakening. But also, in the last 20 years, so much has changed in the queer community. And I don't think anything has evolved as rapidly. And it just felt like there were so many stories that needed to be told from within our community. And that now is the time.
Do you remember what was your first reaction when you saw Queer as Folk? The first time?
Oh yeah, definitely. I was in my basement alone and I would find it on this high up channel and I'd have my thumb on the last channel button on the remote, terrified that someone might walk in and see me. But it was life-changing because it was the first time I'd ever really seen myself reflected in this way. And it gave me hope that maybe someday I might be able to find a community that might also look like me. So it was pretty moving and meaningful back then.
And now for you, what do you want to express with this new version?
Well, I really wanted to lean into the word queer and what it really means to be queer now in 2022. And I wanted the show to be more inclusive, to be accessible to people of different abilities, and to explore gender and be set in a city like New Orleans with a diverse intersection of race, of class, of privilege, and to really authentically show the queer experience as it relates to my community.
Talking about inclusivity, I think some critics will say, oh, but there's too much of everything on this show. So what would you answer them?
I'm really proud of the stories that we're telling. We have a big ensemble. We have a lot of stories, but we're also we're really authentically showing the resilience of queer joy, is at the real forefront of the show, which is about a community rebuilding. It is just, I think joy is such a huge part of the queer experience, of queer survival, as it is still not, we're still fighting in America for basic human rights, and to be able to find joy and pure perseverance through all that is so important. And there's a line in episode 7 that Brodys says that really, I think, captures the tone of the show. And she says, it's a lot harder if you can't laugh about it. And I think that tone is a really strong driving force of the spirit of our show.
I thought the beginning of the show was really daring and powerful, of course. So although it's supposed to be a story of rebuilding after a very, destroying moment, I feel that the Brodys character is still destroying everything, actually, in his own way. So when others are trying to be happy, he's still sabotaging everything. What do you think could be Brodys' salvation?
Brodys is someone who it's not his intention to be destructive in this way. Brodys is really trying to find his sense of identity in himself. He's a Black adopted child in a white family in upper class Louisiana, and he's been searching for home his whole life. And what he didn't realize, we find him at the beginning of the series as he's returning home to New Orleans after dropping out of med school, a path that he didn't really choose for himself. And he's realizing, I think, that the community and the home and the family that he's always been looking for, he had in New Orleans with his friends. And so what happens is, over the course of the season, he finds that he experiences this shooting and this trauma in New Orleans, but it's this event that inspires his decision to stay and to start planting some roots and to start finding a sense of home and purpose. Of course, he's trying so hard to make it right and to right his wrongs from his past, that he still keeps making decisions that are can be harmful to other people. But as he progresses in the season, he starts to get closer and closer to like what that core wound is and what his decision really needs to be in order to say, I think Brodie needs to stop running. He needs to stop running from fear and face it. And that is, I think, what we're going to see. And that's definitely where we go in the end of the season.
This ending, though, do you consider this Queer as Folk as a show from the queer community for the community, and do you even care if straight cis people like it or not?
I mean, I hope that straight cis people can watch it and can learn from it, but I'm not making this show to be educational or instructional. These characters aren't like your queer representation for 2020. These characters are real, flawed, authentic people that are a reflection of our writers' room and the experiences that we've all had. And we're not trying to lecture or educate anyone on queerness. We want to drop you into this messy community that's a lot of fun, that's very vibrant, that's very emotional, that's very raw, and very empowering. And my hope is that straight people from outside of our community can learn from it and can enjoy it, because I think we're at a point now where queer stories don't have to just be for queer people, but can actually be enjoyed by anyone.
There are actually a lot of cultural references, you take a dig at J.K. Rowling, Jussie Smollett and everything. So which one is your favorite, your personal favorite? Or maybe some line that you used all the time? Okay.
I'm holding up my Buffy the Vampire Slayer phone case. I mean, Buffy is referenced kind of throughout the season. Even episode 3 is called Welcome, CUM, to the Helmet. That I think pop culture in general is such a huge part of the queer community, and just like our culture is so tied to a lot of that. But I really enjoy including that as a part. We have Real Housewives. I've actually never even seen Real Housewives, but we have Real Housewives memes that are major plot points in certain episodes. And it's a lot of fun to tie us into this moment, and to reference the cultural touchstones that I think also help shape our own experiences.
I've read that you've met Russell T Davies to get the rights for this new version. So what do you think? What convinced him from your speech, to say yes?
I think I came in with a lot of passion, a lot of anger, and a lot of hope. And those 3 things together, I think, were just a huge basis of our original conversations, and what I wanted to do with the show, and how I wanted to center it around a community rebuilding. That was what really bonded us. And because I think that's what a queer show has. A queer show now has to have bite, I think, because we are living in a time where we're still fighting for survival in so many ways. And I think the energy and the fight that I brought to the table, and how I wanted to take this show into this kind of territory, felt like the right decision. And I think Russell and Nicola saw this as a way to expand on the legacy of their show.
Where do you place your show between the UK version and the US version?
I think we're a strange love child of both of them in a way, because I think the British one, we're a bit more in line with, just in terms of my connection to it is very strong to the British version. I just found the writing so punk and so unapologetic, and they it's messy and so is the American one. But I think we do have references to the American one in it as well. But I think in a way it's, I don't imagine us as a reboot, and I don't imagine us as a sequel. We are sort of the child of these versions of this show that is, telling our own new story.
I like how you Well, there's a lot of sex on the show, of course, but actually I think it's interesting how it's really shown, especially in the opening of episode 2, actually, when everyone is masturbating. So what was the limit for, Peacock regarding the sex aspect, actually?
There was no limit, actually, strangely.
Yeah.
I mean, we got to do everything we wanted to do in the show. There were a lot of conversations around nudity. Specifically, we have a sex scene with some pretty groundbreaking full frontal nudity from Jesse's character Ruthie, in a scene that really is about her. Her episode is really about how after the shooting, she is convinced that her inability to like reach climax is like her problem. It's her block, when obviously there's a lot more going on in her life. And she gives this beautiful speech written by Jacqueline Moore about her identity, her body, her transness, her sexuality, and how linked that is to her survival and her joy. And there's this beautiful sex scene with her and Cher, her non-binary partner, where we just where she's like embracing her body, and that scene has full frontal nudity in it. And it was something we talked a lot about with the network, because we didn't want to shoot this scene. We wanted to make sure that they were okay with what we were shooting, so that it's not a scene that we put our actor through who really wanted to do this, and then it ends up on the cutting room floor because it doesn't, it's a problem for someone. And so we made sure with all of our sex scenes to be very upfront about what it was we were doing, so that we weren't putting any actors through anything that wasn't going to make it on screen, and that they weren't going to be happy with. So as a result, it was strong communication about what our intentions were, and that just made Peacock, I think, feel comfortable with our decisions.
Was it always meant to be 8 episodes? I feel it's a bit short, though.
Me too. I want more. But also 8 episodes. Oh my God, it was so hard.
Your first time as a showrunner, of course. How was the experience?
Oh my goodness, it was it was a big learning curve for me. I come from an indie film world, and I'm not used to this kind of pace. I'm also not used to working with other directors. It's a very lonely job being a director. And so it was actually like, I actually learned a lot from our directors, which was so refreshing, like to have them come in and like teach me. I felt like I was learning from everyone. That was such a gift. I feel like after this experience, I'm like, I can do anything now at this point, because it's a showrunner, creator role is just like, you're wearing 18 different hats at once. What's the famous line? You have to be in 10. You have to be in 10 places at once, but can only be in 3. And that really truly resonated with me after this year.
And just one last question: what's the last TV show you've binged?
The last show I binged was his Prehistoric Planet.
Okay.
A lot of like nature documentaries. That was the last one. My favorite, I will say, well, actually, I just watched Only Murders in the Building, which was a delightful comedy.
Season 2 is coming.
Because season 2 is coming.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Nice chatting with you.
Originals. Découvrez en avant-première nos interviews sur les séries qui font l'actu.